Mr. Eckert? Absent. Mrs. Smith?
Here.
We have 6 here and 1 absent.
Adoption of the agenda. Mrs. Van Houtmeyer, do we have any additions?
No.
Any deletions?
No.
Thank you, duly noted. We will move on to new business. Idea?
Discussion. So we have Mrs. Merrifield, our Administrator of Finance, to present our budget ceilings to Kathy whenever you're ready.
Thank you.
Due to questions earlier today, I thought I would go back to list out the assumptions to begin with. In this budget presentation, I don't know if it's ever been done, but we are proposing to amend the 24-25 budget based on actual numbers accrued through June 30th. And there are 3 proposals to the new year's budget of best case, worst case, and most likely scenarios. In those scenarios, let's see. In the drive on the fiscal year 26 proposed budget, it goes a little more in detail about the different assumptions and what those entail. And I will cover those in general in the presentation. As soon as I can get my mouse to work. First of all, I want to just remind everyone, and this is echoed throughout our entire state, is that this budget for everyone across the board is, to describe it in one word, it would be uncertainty. The House and Senate and the governor are still not on the same page as far as what they're proposing for our funding, as well as all the categoricals. So they still have a lot of work to do so that they can present to us actual hard numbers. So I just want to let everyone know that this is an overview of the budget, that this is based on what we know today. It is a 30,000-foot view of the budget as the numbers that we have to work with. And they change every day, quite often, actually, too. So I wanted to start with, I wanted to get this right out of that. Let's see if it's working. I don't know why.
You need to exit out, Kathy. and go
Yeah, I
back.
think so.
It's coming in. Is it frozen? What is it freezing?
Yeah, it was frozen up there.
Text. Real quick.
Kathy, maybe disconnect.
There we go.
screen,
Yes.
do windows keep? And the side duplicate?
Thank you. Okay. Okay, as I said, like technology, the budget is uncertain. The numbers that we've been provided. I wanted to get this out of the way. First slide is the fund balance. In this projection, there are 3 scenarios for fiscal year '26. And I wanted to point out that this best case scenario is the zero balance budget, where this year, fiscal year '26 revenues match fiscal year '26 expenditures. That gives us a fund balance as a percentage of revenues of 21.33%. The next proposal is the worst case scenario at a fund balance of 13.35%, and the third scenario is most likely at 16.53%. To reiterate, this is an overview of the general assumptions that are made. The state aid membership blend currently is at 1,396. The spring count was 1,376. That's a drop in 20 students. So for budget purposes for fiscal year '25-26, we use the best case scenario enrollment number of 1,367, worst case 1,358, and most likely 1,362. These numbers were provided to us from Stan Fred Associates, and Fred is a statistician who focused on Almont specifically. The worst case scenario is reflected on the current enrollment numbers that was provided to the central office as of last Thursday, which, guess what, it already changed. So I just want to emphasize over and over and over, there are changes every day. The foundation allowance, our best number that we've been given by the House, Senate, and Executive is $10,000 per pupil in fiscal year '25-26, and we were given $96.08 last year. The revenue funding assumptions were taken from the Fiscal Agency House bill dated June 10th, and that was the latest revision that I had. So all those estimates that were provided to us by the FAH were used in budgeting. The typical other cost increases, and this seems to increase every year, are the ORS rates, the health cap, utilities, of course, and inflation. Our P&C insurance increased by 5.22% this year, and I increased our revenue in general property tax by 3%. The best case scenarios used to estimate actual prior year hours worked for hourly employees. So the best case scenario wages were taken from actual hours worked in fiscal year '25 and used in fiscal year '26 best case scenario budget, including their natural step increases. The worst case scenario estimates are based on all the possible hours that they could possibly work all year long if they have perfect attendance, everybody. The most likely scenario was based on the average of those two cases. The other assumption that was made is to include the expense that will need to be incurred in a Chromebook refresh. There are 3 scenarios that were given to the central office by the tech department, and I know that future presentation is coming to you to go over those scenarios. And then finally, we estimated the average of the eligible teachers and staff for their natural step 5% increase across the board. So now we want to talk about revenue. The state impact, the state funding impact per pupil. So I want to talk about this a bit, is that even though the foundation allowance went from $96.08 to $10,000, looks like a $392 per pupil increase. However, they are removing a very important retirement cost offset that they gave us last year because they did not increase our founding allowance last year. For our district, that's $424,000 that we most likely will not be receiving, but we don't know. It's speculation. The declined enrollment projection, as I mentioned, from 1396 to actual fall count 1389. So we are estimating 1367. So on the right is the spreadsheet showing all the math, giving us an actual per pupil increase of $99.76. I wanted to share with you the historic state foundation allowance. You can see the small gradual increase there sometimes each year. In this, I took this data from the Michigan data website, Michigan school data website. I wanted to show you a 10-year enrollment, 11 years. And you can see our slow incline, decline, and then COVID, then incline again, and now we're back on the downswing there. I did, based on our projections from Stanford Associates, we did an enrollment with future projection based on kindergarten coming in and seniors going out. And Fred had specifically told us repeatedly that we really need to keep our kindergartners. We need to keep our kindergartners all the way through graduation. So this kind of reflects the estimated years for 25, 26, and 27 fiscal year. This slide goes into detail about the retirement, the new rates, the old rates, our district, they are called categoricals, where on our state aid funding, we're given one-time line items. They are temporary, like offsets to the per pupil allowance. And this just kind of goes into detail for you, the changes made there. And I want to reiterate again that this is taken from the 147 guide it's all subject to change. I did put a copy of this in your drive. The amended 24-25 year proposed revenue are in this sheet here, and it demonstrates that compared to the 25-26 proposed revenues on the 3 different scenarios. And again, the assumption is made that we will receive $10,000 per pupil in state aid. I also included the student enrollment estimate in those numbers as well. I wanted to demonstrate to you the revenue by source. As you can see, we receive 85% of our funding by the state, 9% is from local, 5% is from federal, and 1% other. And this represents the source of foundation allowance, where 89% is from state aid and 11% from local property taxes. Again, I'll sound like a broken record, but the numbers keep changing. For an example, this is the House Fiscal Agency. They issue a district impact several times a year, and in March of 2025, they had published that our total change was $13,000. Then in April 22nd, now it's changed $536,000. So that's a really big swing. And I just wanted to demonstrate to you the changes that occur all the time that we're constantly keeping up with and amending. I wanted to give a little bit of information about our state, but I didn't want to give too much here in the presentation, but this is available in your drive for you to review if you're curious, like I was. Of the school aid share of the total general fund budget for the state, I wanted to show this right here. The school aid is 1%. 1%. 1%. The school aid budget share of total school aid is of that 1%. School aid goes 95% to LEAs, 3% to community college, and 2% to higher education. And the governor is talking about taking money away from the school aid and giving more to community colleges and higher education. This talks about how sales tax is the largest revenue source in our state. At 43% is our income from sales tax. And this slide just discusses the gross appropriations, where 49% foundation allowance, 13% MIPSR is retirement, 13% special ed, and so on. Let's talk about expenses. This reflects the amended 24-25 year proposed expenditures, and then the 3 scenarios for the fiscal year. And here is just a pie chart to demonstrate that instructional services makes up the largest piece of that. And here's a comparison of 24-25 to 25-26, the expenditure comparison of those categories. And again, another graph comparing the 2 years, salaries, benefits, purchase services, supplies and materials, and so on. Wanted to give you a historical fund balance. Back in 2015, we had a fund balance of 4.5%, and in 23-24, our audited fund balance was at 14.69%, and this demonstrates the changes there. So the question is now what? We're proposing that we either adopt the zero-based best case scenario or the most likely scenario, but we will definitely have to amend this after the bill is signed. The bill is usually signed by the governor end of July into August. So all I can recommend that we do is make our best our best proposal and adopt that as our budget. But I wanted to make sure I focused on, but wait, there's more. There are future considerations once we know what our actual budget numbers are. We are creating a list of items to work into the fiscal year 96 budget at the amendment time when the governor signs the bill and we have a better idea of what our funding will be. Some of these items include, there's a potential, this is in the works right now, for the para-eds to join the AESPA. There are budget line items that will need to be adjusted, amended for curriculum. And then in lieu of sinking fund now, which we are spending down, we need to set aside money for repairs and maintenance. There's a need to plan for contingencies. If, we always say, what if the boiler goes out? We just have to make plans for that depending on what our actual funding will be. So that is the conclusion of the presentation. If anyone has any questions.
student count, the sheet you gave us, at the end of June, we're at 1364.
Snapshot of the August one, is that the one you're referring to, Mr. Wade?
Yep.
Okay, yeah.
So, and our projected with school choice is 1346 from, I forget the name already,
Stanford,
Stanford.
Stanford.
my estimate is 1367.
But with the amount, the school choice and the enrollment we have now is, we're at 1346 seats, bodies and seats.
Is that all together with the school choice and our last two, Mrs. Myers? Just want to make sure we have the right numbers. That's including school, that'd be including school choice.
School choice, it doesn't account for any people that are leaving.
Yeah, but it includes our school choice applicants that we have on the docket. But not, it doesn't include for people moving in potentially into the formula that we referenced with Frederick.
So, and that's the, it's a formula, but it's not a guarantee. And my concern is that
Oh, yeah.
based on 20, we were 1391 in fall of '23, but we had zero increase from that, from what we budgeted. In June of '24, for the 24-25, we increased 3. Okay, but if we're at 1346 now, that's a 21 student decrease from what our projected is. I don't know if I'm comfortable with a formula for that versus being a little more conservative in terms of the bodies. It's going to be harder for us to overcome 20 students that may or may not move into the district versus 10. So I would look at the
Like adjusting that
Adjusting,
to
I would-
be a more conservative number.
the worst case scenario in terms of that number is to me is more comfortable. We can adjust should more bodies come in as we move in, but we can't go forth and then just all of a sudden get to August. Oh no, we can't. We make those changes. We have to do that now. We need to
And I know you understand that it's so fluid, right, Mr. Wade? It's like, it's drops, it's adds, but where's the balance gonna be, right, at the end of the
And
day?
we-
And you're asking, just in general, you're asking us to look at a more conservative
Yes.
number.
Because 2 years ago, I think we were off by 20 students, and we had to make changes. And that
Okay.
was not something we wanted to do in August. We were overestimating where we were at, so it's something to consider.
But that was the whole point, I know like doing the enrollment projection study, so we would have numbers to bring tonight that we're, showing you. But you're saying between the number that's being shown, you'd like to see a little bit more conservative. Okay.
Mrs. Smith?
Miss,
I would agree with Mr. Wade from the standpoint of being at these budget meetings for many years before joining the board. They always went with the most conservative that they possibly could because, stats move just like people are moving and school choice moves. And so, just because they're giving us this number doesn't mean that that number is actually gonna be there. It's a lot easier to add money to a budget because we get more students than it is to now, all right, what are we gonna take away at the beginning of the school year? So I would rather be more cautious, because it's really easy to add the numbers in. And I think that that's what they've done in the past.
I agree.
I was going through and I'll talk about this more in the session. I was trying to figure out how we were in terms of our expenditures, how we went through a year, and the difference between what we are projecting for 24-25 and the worst case scenario was about almost $2 million in terms of the expenditures. How can we go from what we've done this year and then all of a sudden we're almost $2 million more, or spending more. So that's why I asked for what the potential, reduction list, what's not in the first, what's not in the best case scenario that is put into the worst case scenario. So that we have money, we add these things in as we go through. Why are we, what is that almost $2 million that the expenses tally up to be? Because if we can do 17.4 for expenses, yes, we're gonna have some increases, taxes, that type of stuff, inflation. We should be relatively, not $2 million higher. So I'm curious, and as I went through, I think the reason we are, we said 12 or 14, 12 and then we're at 14 after the audit. We have budgeted, not conservatively for some of the items. I had been looking for, why was there $100,000 extra in athletics? Well, I went through last year for July and we budgeted $479,000, but we spent $360,000. That's $119,000 that we didn't spend. That could have been spent elsewhere, but that's what ended in the general fund. So I think there was a couple areas in there where it was like that, which is why our audit was so much higher than what we're projecting. We should try to be closer to the actual, not getting to November and hoping that the audit is swinging that way. That has done, but it could be because of our budgeting that in June, why it has swung that way, because we over budgeted for certain expenses and haven't spent it. So there's things that
Mr. Wade, can you clarify the year that 100,000, because it's been referenced that with the athletic budget, can you reference the year?
This past year, so July 2024, if you look at the expenditure report, that was the last, so 360,000 was spent, 479 was budgeted.
Okay.
And then the year before, those were the June, consecutive years, it's been over budgeted. So that's money.
That's why I was referencing, I thought it was like more than just
Yep,
this
so
last 24, 25
The only one that
year.
I went back to get the July one was this past year, the 24, so I didn't get time to go through 23 to see
Okay.
the July, but, so just for reference, June of 22, 23, we budgeted 479, but it was 370 we spent in June. We need to look at the July one to see where the final was. In 23, 24, we budgeted 479, it was 295 in June, so we got to 360 between June and July. This year, we budgeted 454, so far we spent 351. So we're over budgeting by 100,000 each time in these last 3 years for the athletics. And there are other ones that are like this, that we need to be closer to be true. If we're budgeting that for certain ones, what are we not providing in other areas of instruction, of aids, of this where it could be spent?
Do you have a, sorry.
And if I can mention too, that last budget was done by an outside consulting firm. And I believe she took the actuals from the prior year, or what was budgeted in the prior year, and you guys have had some turnover in business managers. So when I did the best case scenario, I used the actual amounts from fiscal year 25, estimated out through the end of June. So that's where those swings are.
So
But
it's not over, this one going into it, not 100,000 over budget.
right now,
We're not spending over, we're providing more money than we're not spending.
Right, it's not allocated,
Not
yeah,
allocated.
budget. Mr. Wade had asked about the list, like the expenses, do we have anything like that?
I think the reference, Kathy, we talked about the slide, when she said list of items, and then she said some of the items included. So just keeping these items here, the para ads to join the ASPA, line items for curriculum, which Mr. Bruno is going to present tonight, a scenario for that. Sinking fund, because we have spent that down, just to look at and consider some general fund usage for contingencies. So these are just some of the priority items that, once we get the real numbers, I think is how you stated it, Kathy, to look at those real numbers to see how that is going to be allocated.
get more information on how the estimates vary from each other, the best case, worst case, and most likely, in the detailed budget spreadsheet, the very first tab has the assumed, the budget assumptions in that first tab. And then in the actual budget itself, which is, 1,600 lines, I'm sorry, there's a column that says notes to best case scenario, and there's notes speaking to the bigger ticket items on those scenarios, so the details are in there as well.
And then going back to the worst case scenario, Kathy, just to highlight that one, again, going back to, because we've talked about it through another finance committee meeting, just that impact that it would, for the hourly employees, what an impact that makes. And that does make up a huge percentage of the worst case scenario.
Yeah, and in
So I think
dollars,
it's just important to kind of highlight that. It's not all, everything, but to your point, you have the notes and everything in the spreadsheets, which I think greatly appreciate you taking the time to do these 3 case scenarios
Yeah.
and spelling that out.
and in dollars, that's $600,000 swing.
$600,000.
Yes. From estimated hours, if the hourly employees worked all the potential hours they could work, different from what was actually worked in fiscal year '25, it's $600,000 different.
Mrs. Smith?
Miss,
One of the things that is not in here is, you have a wage reopener with staff. So, I mean, you brought up what just the cost would be of the step that they should be guaranteed. We still have a wage reopener out there as well that is going to take some funds, and we've got to be competitive with the schools around us so we don't lose staff. So we have to be aware of that, and that's not in here anywhere.
We accounted for the way that the budget was set was
Yep.
giving everyone their
Their
steps.
full
like
step.
Making sure, the teachers and, we have proposed, right, our secretaries have a scale and our non-reps now have a scale. Everyone was moving to their step, was how it was budgeted.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying.
Yes,
I do
we have a
understand what
wage
you're saying.
reopener.
Yep, I understand what you're saying.
Be aware of that.
Absolutely, because it
That's
will,
what I-
make an impact. Yeah, I know what you're saying. I'm aware.
And this all came out at the request to create a zero balance budget. So that's the starting point of, where we're at, and then best and worst case worst and most likely were worked on from that zero base.
Mrs. Smith, I think that Mr. Wade and you and I were all pretty firm on that zero-based budget when we asked for the information. So that's where the finance committee was.
Kathy, when you started out, you said you didn't know, you want to propose amending the 24-25 budget. I missed what you said, I kind of cut out a little bit in the beginning, you said you didn't know that had ever been done before.
No, I know that's been done before.
Oh,
It's
okay.
the three scenarios. I don't
Three
know.
scenarios.
Oh,
Three
okay.
scenarios have been done.
Okay.
So it's kind of, it's new for me. I don't know if it's new for you guys, but.
Anybody else have any clarifying questions or any questions? Your time to ask. Ms. Vaughn, do you have anything you want to say about the budget? Information?
No, I think Kathy and I have been working, more so Kathy, obviously, putting the 3 case scenarios together, but I can assure you, it's been a lot of dialogue with, between central office, our administrative team, pulling together budget numbers, so this has definitely been a collective effort, but I really would like to applaud Kathy for putting these 3 case scenarios together to present to the board. Sounds like we could still have to reel it in a little bit and take a look at, some adjustments potentially before Monday at the budget hearing, but we feel like overall, this is in a pretty good spot considering our
Kathy, you said that because everything changes daily. How, after tonight, how are we gonna know numbers that change on these spreadsheets and stuff from tonight until like Monday night? Like how will we,
Didn't we do a revised date in the drive? If anything updates, Kathy, there'd be a revision and update in the drive.
Yeah, I mean, this is all an estimate, everything's an estimate, the enrollment's an estimate.
I
We're-
completely understand that, but there's so many tabs and so many documents and so many things that we're looking at, and I do appreciate all that, but I wanna make sure that if what I'm looking at tonight, and then if I look at it again, I mean, we're probably all going to look at this every single night for the next week. I wanna make sure that I'm not missing something that's changing, so I just wanna make sure that the board has a way to know if a number has changed or something has changed. So that's why I wanna get on the same page with how we can do that.
Well, I can tell you I'm taking the next 3 days off, so unless you want changes made on Monday, I can get a list from all of you, one list, and make those changes.
Excuse me, I guess in order, like, track changes in the spreadsheet itself, or track the date itself at all? I guess is my question, like, you know, in Word, Excel, you can track changes, so if
Right.
she edits anything and keeps it, are you asking that question, or are you asking, you know, if at 8:45 PM she updated, you know, is the next version available, thinking of that?
I guess a little bit of both, like if we're looking at something and then it changes, like we wanna make sure we're updated. And I just wanna make sure that everybody has, if something changes that we're aware of it.
Yeah, I don't plan on changing, I mean, if you wanna change the enrollment number and then the revenue based on that, but I don't know what other changes.
I think we do want the enrollment number to be more conservative with that number, so we do want that changed.
So in the zero-based, the best case scenario, zero-based, the revenue or the enrollment used is 1367.
And what was the number you had, Mr. Reed, that you wanted to show?
1362?
1346 is the one, 1346 is the one that was.
1358 was the worst.
1346, just to be clear, right, that was like with no other students coming in. This is just the projected, again, with including our school choice applicants right now. So 1346 would not represent any additional students entering Almont schools. in
But
the fall.
as Ray pointed out earlier, we've got, what is it, three?
1358 was the worst case.
Right.
So I can't say we're not gonna change in terms of students, but if we lose more students, it's gonna be more further away from 1367. So the closer we are to where we are actually, the better it's gonna be for us in August.
So if I can remind everyone, whatever number we end up using for the budget, it's only gonna change by $99 per student. So, you know, we can change that enrollment number and you'll see a slight change. But you know, any number you use is just $99 per pupil. That will be the change.
I think the board would like another change.
Okay.
This is fine. You know, just so that you're aware, this is always the way it is, and it's always up in the air, and they talk about things, and then they skew things, and, you know, until the deadline happens, it can be all over the place, and you just track it the best that you can. So what we decide on, at Monday's meeting, we can always amend at a later point in time, but in the past, we've always decided very conservatively, because that has always worked the best for us.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes, Mr. Earl.
Kathy, is there a document in here that's very, like where Mr. Wade brought up, like we're over budget in the athletics? Is there like a document that shows like the actual budget from, like the proposed budget from last year and what the actual was, that like we can like see very clearly, like, oh, hey, we're 100,000 in this, 50,000 in this, 20,000 in this? Which document would that be? Because like I know line document, I'm asking if there's one that's more concise than that.
The third tab on the bottom, actual to budget history.
Okay. I will pull that up. Thank you. I know we're not complete yet because we haven't finished.
So the difference between the 1346 and 1367 is 21 students. 21 times 99, it's $2,000. I'm just, I can do that change, no problem. Be easy.
Isn't it $10,000 a student?
Minus the MIPSers, but again, that's potential substitute change. So if
Right.
they give us that, then they could be potentially $210,000. So that's keep your eyes on
Yeah.
the articles and the news clippings.
Can I also ask just a clarifying question too, just to make sure that we're putting numbers and a budget in front of you that you can get behind. So in regards to, again, just trying to recognize our AEA, our teachers union, our secretaries, our non-reps across the board consistently, fairly, are we looking to then build in, has it been, I guess, past practice then that you've seen numbers, if there's a wage reopener, that's included? If I could have clarification on that.
We've just always gone in knowing that we're gonna have a wage reopener once we have solid numbers. So we could say 3%, 4%, 5%. Once you get a wage reopener, it's a negotiation
I
process starts
understand,
again.
yeah,
So
I'm aware. But is that something that you want reflected in the budget? I just want to be clear of what I'm asking, either Kathy or I'll be following up myself to put those numbers in front of you. I want to make sure I'm clear what the board is asking for.
I don't know our past practice in terms of we did a set number.
Mrs. Smith, yeah, I don't think it's been a set number. And part of that is because it's communicating with two different sides. You know, there is no public number that is ever given out, but on that one page, when you talk about, you know, other costs that can possibly happen, I think that it needs to be on that page. We've got to be aware. You know, you don't want, if you're not showing that we have an awareness of it, it's almost like slamming the door on the teacher saying, yep, we're not gonna budget for you because all you get is your staff. So I think that we have to be honest.
That wasn't,
and-
just to be clear, that was not the light that was shed on. I mean, as far as not, you know, looking at that as a wage reopener or indicating that through the through these current budget numbers. We were just trying to be consistent and making sure that everybody was moving, you know, on the salary scale. We wanted to do at least that until we get the numbers from the state. So, but I just didn't know if that was past practice or if there was something, you know, again, just to be clear, something that you would want us to look at and make sure that's included in the budget, or is this kind of on the list that we're talking about generating and to
On the
consider on the list? Okay,
Yes.
I appreciate that.
That's-
Thank you.
That's the purpose of the list. If we have to go
That's
through and
the
make a
clarification I needed.
zero-based budget, and and we get the numbers back, and we can add things back in
Mhm.
August 1st or whatever it
Perfect.
is, the day
Okay.
after,
Sure.
we know what our priority list is, and
Okay.
it's, okay, 1 through 5 is in.
Yep.
And then we can have more conversations about 6 through 10.
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? At this time, questions and comments from the audience. Anybody would like to be recognized at this time? 3 minutes, and state your first and last name. You're the only one that wants to.
Oh, okay. Paul Bowman. At the last meeting, I had questioned the 24, 25 estimated and how it changed so much by $700,000 from the approved amendment back in February. And I was given a lot of sheets of paper and stuff like that, but I still don't have a good handle on why, and I'll just use one of them, the basic program for primary. In the audited 23-24, we spent $3,143,365. And now, from what I see, it looks like we're spending less than $3 million. How can we have a reduction in salaries and costs when we've not laid anybody off and salaries have gone up and so on and so forth? And I'll tell you, if you look at the three schools, I mean, that's a lot of money that we're under that. Our original budget of 25 in February, the amended one, was probably a heck of a lot closer than, than what the numbers are now. I couldn't read all those numbers on that, it's like an eye chart. But I didn't sound like that our fund balance had changed much from the projected 24-25 from what we talked about last time when we were adding over $1 million to the fund balance. Maybe I misunderstood that, but it sounded like that's still there. And I know when I got an email back from Ms. Bond, she said that things weren't firm yet and that things were going to change. I don't see the changes from 24-25 unless I'm missing something. It just doesn't add up. Something doesn't add up.
Anybody else like to recognize?
I'm Tanya Halverson. I've been a teacher at the high school for 29 years. I'm just, I'm unclear, I guess, about what the different proposals entail, like on the ground kind of part. We're under the impression that one of them involves not replacing a vital part of my department because of convenient resignation. And I just want to express how dire it is for these kids to have the attention, the timely and really detailed feedback in the English department. I mean, our goals for the entire district are about reading and writing. And one of the scenarios, I don't know if it's the best or the worst or the most likely, I can't tell, but it's terrible. It's really terrifying that we're going to put even more work on the very small department that we already have if wherever that happens, we don't fulfill a position that would have been there otherwise. If we're going to make changes moving forward, restructuring, maybe it's better to look at this in the fall as part of the our goals moving forward, our 5-year goals, our we make a plan that we can strategize with each other and all work together on, rather than just kind of cutting us off at the knees.
Anybody else like to recognize?
Yeah, so again, just to echo the statements of Ms. Halverson and to show support and solidarity with my department and the other department as well as my counselor who's here, and thank you for being here and just advocate for us. I do believe that our teachers are amazing at the high school, and I believe that our English department is working very hard along with the rest of our departments to have and remove what I believe is a critical piece of that department will have a repercussion that will last for years with our students. And to me, that's, we're going to be impacted most by this. The quality of service and quality of instruction, I think, is impacted when you ask more to be done for less. So I just wanted to, again, put my words out there and advocate for my building, and, kind of just looking at the writing on the wall, or at least addressing the fears we have in this room, and say that I really hope that we continue in the best interest of our students, our high school students who are trying to get that dynamic programming, that dynamic instruction that is competitively offered to other districts around us, and just making sure that we continue to be a standout district and a standout choice for our students who are coming out of families. Thank you.
Anybody else like to recognize? Questions and comments from the Board of Education?
Mrs. Smith.
Ms. Brett?
I just wanted to clarify, our role as the Board of Education is to keep us financially in good shape based on information that we're given. We're not the one that, we don't make the cuts, all of that is the superintendent's role. But spending, over $800,000 into deficit, the following year it will double, and the district can't afford that. So, where that impact is going to be, I'm not 100% sure at this time. I just know that, we can't be looking at close to $900,000 of deficit spending in 1 year. So, that's,
Thank you, Ms. Riley.
I just wanted to clarify that.
Any other comments or questions from the board?
Smith, I just wanted to again recognize Kathy again for all the work that's been put into building this budget, and again, the three-case scenario. So I just wanted to highlight that, and I do appreciate all the blood, sweat, tears that you put into that. It's a lot of work, and we will work through this, so thank you very much. I appreciate it, and board members, I appreciate your feedback to provide some clarity from moving forward.
Future agenda items.
Mrs. Smith,
Mr. Burrow.
I move the Board of Education adjourn the special meeting today at June 17th, 2025 at 5:56 p.m.
Support.
Motion and support, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We will begin our next meeting at Okay, good evening. We'll call this Almont Board of Education work session to order on Tuesday, June 17th, 2025 at 6:10 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Burrow, will you do roll call, please?
Mr. Eckert? Mr. Burrow, here. Mr. Wade?
Here.
Mr. Burns?
Here.
Mr. Terrius?
Here.
Ms. Friend?
Here?
Ms. Smith?
Here.
We have all seven.
Thank you, Mr. Burrow. Adoption of agenda. Any additions?
We do. We have two additions, late hour here, but we would like to add number 4, our state aid note under finance, and number 5 under finance, our drinking fountain and water fill stations update and recommendation.
Any deletions?
No.
Thank you. At this time, we have questions and comments from the audience pertaining to the agenda only. Would anybody like to say anything at this point? There will be another opportunity at the end.
I want to make sure nothing's on the agenda, so I'll wait till.
Yeah, it has to be pertaining to the agenda.
Yes.
Are there agendas? There is another opportunity at the end.
Yeah, I could wait until.
Okay, all right. Okay, Mrs. Von Heltmeyer.
So under communications, we have Mrs. Blum, one of our high school teachers here, to talk about another exciting opportunity for a group trip.
Yes.
So,
Hi.
Mrs. Blum.
Good afternoon, good evening. Yes, I'm Mrs. Blum and I teach English and history at the high school. Last spring, I sent you guys all an email, so hopefully, if I didn't bring it here, I figured you guys could just peruse at your own leisure. But last spring, myself and Mrs. Halverson, we went with 22 people from the high school to Rome and Athens, and it was amazing. We went hard the whole trip. We went from like museum to ruin to museum, back to ruins. I mean, they saw and did a million awesome things, from like trying traditional foods to learning traditional dances to seeing like amazing things. And everywhere we went, people would stop us and say like, "You guys are a great group. Where are you from? Where are you guys from?" And we would get to say, "We're from Almont." So it was really cool to not only take kids from Almont out into the world, but also take some Almont and put it out too. So that was cool. So with that being said, it was such a successful trip, and we had so many people that were interested that we wanted to kind of play off of that interest and offer another trip. So we would like to offer for students who would be in 9th through 12th grade for next year to be able to go to England and Ireland for 9 days the first week of summer. So we're going to try something different. We had tried spring break. That was great, except that it took our whole spring break, and it was kind of tough for the kids to come back. It was tough for us to come back. So we're going to see if this is maybe something different. So we are still partnering with the same tour company, EF Tours. They do an excellent job of being like boots on the ground, great way of communicating with us, setting up our trip, kind of walking us through all the great things that we get to do. So yeah, I just wanted to let you all know, help build the excitement, and hopefully get your approval of the do so. Yes.
What was your favorite part of the trip?
Oh, so I think I really liked seeing how the kids could roll with the punches and how they were really good about like, we had, when we were in Athens, 2.5 million people were without water. There was a water main break, our hotel ran out, or was completely out of water, and I think we complained way more than they did. We spent the entire day out in the city, they did awesome, we came back, we still didn't have water, and they packed up their bags, and then we got to move to like a beautiful hotel at the foot of the Acropolis. So we had beautiful views of downtown Greece. They got to walk around downtown Greece at night, like things that they wouldn't have gotten to do. And it was all like just one positive experience after another. Like they saw things that they had never seen before, and instead of being like, ooh, I don't know, this is weird, they were like, yes, let's try it, let's do this. So that's what I liked seeing the kids. And Delphi was amazing. So yeah.
How do they like the food over there?
I think there was a lot of pizza because we were in Italy. So I mean, they got to try thin crust, they got to try thick crust, so that was the sauce on top, sauce on bottom. So that I think was a good experience. We had a lot of students that, especially the boys, that I think they were like Hoover vacuums. Like, can we have another pizza? Can we have another?
They all tried a lot of new foods.
Everything.
There's only maybe one student that didn't dig into whatever it was, because we had traditional Greek, we had traditional, other Italian stuff too.
Yeah, and they were all really, really, they got lunch out, and a lot of times they could choose to go to like McDonald's or, and they didn't. They chose to go to like a sit-down restaurant in the corner of like 2 Greek streets in the Plaza district, just because they could. So that was really cool.
Anybody have any questions?
Ms. Smith, did you say it was like a group of 20?
There were 22 of us, yes.
22. How did you select the kids to go?
It was basically anybody who wanted to do it. I would love to offer it to students who want to travel the world. I feel like it's one of those gateway things that once you do it once, then you do it forever. So we offered it to anyone who wanted and their parents. So we had quite a few adults that were with us as well.
And I truly don't know, how was it funded?
We had one girl work at McDonald's. She self-funded. So it is fully like the payments, monthly payments. So the farther out you go, the shorter or the less per month it is or whatever. But it's monthly payments. They have like a fundraising page that they have on their own, so they can choose to like, instead of birthdays, just put money onto here. And it's like a kind of like a GoFundMe, but it's their own personal thing that they choose to do on their own. So they do it all themselves and they work hard. And then one girl, she like saved all of her spending money, and so then she was buying like the most fabulous things. She bought like a $200 necklace, and she bought like shoes because she that's what she wanted to do. She had like made sure she could do those things. So I think it helps teach responsibility. It helps teach like that international awareness, culture. It's really cool.
This is one, I know the price can vary probably depending on participants, if they still do it the same, or is there a flat rate?
It is a flat rate.
Okay.
For
What is the
students,
rate?
it's about $4,000 to $4,200. And then for adults, if they choose to go with their student, it's about $5,000 total.
Okay.
And that includes all of your flights and your room and your board and at least 2 meals a day, and then all of your transportation. So it's a pretty good deal.
Thank you.
Mrs. Smith? I have been on several of the EF tours, and they are amazing. As an educator, to watch kids experience totally new things, that is the best part, I think, when they're so young and they're getting their eyes open. EF is extremely safe. They have just the most wonderful guides that take you wherever it is that you're going. 4 thumbs, 5 thumbs up, 5 stars, there we go. And to have fabulous teachers like you guys go, it's a great educational experience for kids.
And for us. I mean, I learned a lot of really cool things I could bring back to the classroom. And then some of my students came, and so then when we came to like those subjects, they were like, oh, I want to talk about it. Like, I want to be the one that tells. So that's cool.
Moving on. The next one is our school choice update, or just following up in our discussion. If you look at your chart, and I believe Mrs. Myers put one in front of everybody, is that correct? So at the bottom there, while we received 56 school choice applications thus far, only 35 are new students, with 25 of those being in kindergarten. The rest of the applications were received for students that either moved out of the district and would like to continue their education here, or were enrolled under a release from the resident district when the student grade was closed to school choice in previous years. These students have all been accounted for already in our numbers, as they have been students of ours in the 24-25 school year. By accepting them as school of choice students, this will allow us to clean up our data and our accounting. This will make our audits much easier to put together and less room for errors. It's generally thought to be best practice to not have many students here on a release. Sometimes obtaining a release from another district is unavoidable, especially in cases with special education students, but we can help clean up the data and accounting practices now and have proper protocol moving forward in terms of accepting students. So overall, if you're looking at grades 1 through 5, I would tell you again, as far as accepting the new students for school of choice, we would have 1 overall in kindergarten, 1 in 2nd grade, 1 in 3rd grade, 1 in 4th grade, and 3 in 5th grade. Everyone else is dispersed in the other grade levels. So really, we're looking at a total of 7. And really staying true or very close to our class optimums. The one that's a little bit of an outlier would be just, 5th grade off by a student, I would say a student and a half, if you will, with the +3 that we would be looking at accepting for school of choice. Discussion.
Any questions?
Any questions for me or nothing else? Thank you, appreciate it. Okay, we're going to transition here with Mr. Spear. As promised, he's going to deliver a cell phone handbook update.
Good evening, happy Tuesday. Thanks for joining me here. I'm going over here because I like to talk in front of y'all. So, as you recall, here's your mission and vision. You recall, the ask after our April 22nd meeting together, in which I proposed a change to my handbook. I linked the full detail there, but in summation, I asked to rename a category from prohibited item to electronic device, and I requested phone trees in our classrooms. I was asked to provide a little bit more information to the board. Specifically, I was asked to kind of take a look at our own disciplinary records that might warrant a move like this, as well as talk to surrounding districts and surrounding schools to see kind of how their policies shook up and how ours compare. At the bottom here, I want to remind folks, I did also survey our own staff within the high school. And just as a reminder, an overwhelming majority of our staff would like an increase in restriction for our cell phone policy in the building, and an overwhelming majority of our staff voted for phone trees specifically. So just keep those in mind as we're moving through here. So, our data. Where do we stand here for this past school year? Our disciplinary breakdown for cell phone related incidents include 67 incidents of cell phone use in class. That is just students caught with their phones in class, nothing else attached to that, they just had their phone out in class. We had, in addition to that 67, another 7 incidents of insubordination accompanying that cell phone use in class. So on top of those 67, we also had 7 incidents where things escalated from there. There was some additional behavior action, something that disrupted class, profanity, defiance, some other type of behavior associated with that cell phone being used in class. And then on top of those numbers, we had an additional 12 incidents of poor digital citizenship. Now, we've had more incidents of digital citizenship, but specifically 12 of them involved using a cell phone in school during school hours to spread rumors, to record vandalism or trespassing, or otherwise violate our district policies. So the total result there is nearly 25%, just about a quarter of all disciplinary action within our building this year as a result of cell phone use in class or in the building during school hours. To give you a little bit more insight there, I also provided a complete breakdown of what our disciplinary process looks like, or disciplinary actions look like. So not only can you get an idea that it was a quarter of our disciplinary situations, but it's the largest chunk of that pie there. It is a larger issue in our building than tardiness, which comes in at 18%. So just to give you an idea of what we're dealing with, that light blue there is just cell phone use in our building. That is from our disciplinary breakdown from the school year. I was also asked to provide information and insight from our other districts. Now, I did provide like kind of full quotes from each of these folks. I asked everybody in the BWAC to give me some insight on their policies, but I'll kind of summarize what they included there. So from North Branch, they do have phone trees in every room.
And again, they report just the consistency of those policies being enforced as being dependent on how successful they are. Croslex is the same thing. They have a phone caddy or a phone park. And again, just they note that an escalation involves turning it into the office if they can't handle it with the caddies in their classrooms. At Armada, I think it's pretty well known here, they implemented a late in the school year policy. I provided a direct link to it, but in summation, again, there are cell phone holders in every class and progressive discipline to address that. From Algonac, they currently use a cell phone tree policy, and they're actually going to revisit that policy to increase it. They're looking at potentially having it more restrictive, to having it only be in their lockers, and so they cannot use their cell phones at all during the school day, but currently have a cell phone tree policy in place. Yale is the only one like us that do not yet have a cell phone tree policy. They are waiting on legislation. But again, their issue is a consistency in enforcement of no cell phones in class within their classrooms. Imlay City has phone trees. And then Richmond provided us like just a complete breakdown of their disciplinary process as well as their cell phone policy. But again, in summation, it is a cell phone tree that they use with a progressive discipline policy. And the quote that they had there was, if an 8th grader can follow their more restrictive policy, then it should have no problem with high school recognizing that their classrooms are red zones or no cell phone allowed. So again, in conclusion, that brings us to the success rate of other schools' phone policies are dependent on how consistently they're enforced in their spaces, not necessarily policies themselves. Again, phone tree policies seem to be going well with these other districts so long as they're consistently enforced. And that we are one of the only schools next to Yale in the BWAC without any kind of phone policy that regards at least some type of phone tree or more restrictive phone policy within the classroom. Do I have any questions in regards to that?
Any questions on? Ms. Bonnet, so are you thinking of implementing that in all 3 buildings, or just in the high school, or what do you?
The middle school is already restricted, theirs is in their lockers.
Okay, that's right.
Mhm.
Middle schools is the most,
Yeah.
probably the most
It's the
restrictive.
most
That is
restricted.
no cell phones. Well,
I
yeah.
take the phone to mom or dad, they're gonna get it from me at the end of the day, so if you got kids there, let them know that can inconvenience you.
Yeah, our middle school's already probably the most restricted. and
Yeah, I would say
heavy
it would
in
be
the
more
lockers
restricted
and
than
the
phone
lock-
tree.
Yeah, so that would
And
be
then
more. Yeah.
What is the plan for our kids, our students that have their cell phones for like, some of our diabetic students, stuff like that? Like,
There are exceptions.
They can.
There are
Yeah, if you had a
exceptions.
504 or some other type of medical
504,
organization,
IEP,
that would be a
Yeah.
different thing than, yeah.
That's just working with families and understanding the protocol.
For sure.
And communicating that, obviously, with our staff.
I just didn't know if it was any written into the policy or how.
Oh, as far as exceptions, I don't think you would have to do that, because that would be, you would, I mean,
I mean,
You
a
can do a
state medical
disclaimer,
document, yeah,
but-
would override a school policy in
Yeah,
regard
it
to
will.
504
I
that
will.
says, hey, my student needs a phone because it tracks their blood sugar or something like that in that regard.
Listen, that-
Yes, sir.
if we're already more restricted at the middle school, why are we lightening up?
We aren't lightening up. We are currently, I'm sorry,
I mean,
because,
this proposal is potentially lightening, like if the middle school, they have to keep them in their lockers.
so currently right now, when they, to your point, when they leave out of the middle school, which is phones are in the lockers at all times, they come into our building and our current phone policy is just kept away in our classrooms. So right now, I would argue it is like probably the least restricted. And what we are just arguing for right now, or proposing, is more restriction. To get closer in line to middle school, if anything, we're moving towards them, not away from them.
it seems like as they get older,
I
there's a
think-
little
I'm
bit
sorry,
more
I'm sorry.
freedom,
Yeah,
I
I
would
agree.
say,
Yeah.
if you will.
Yeah.
But because of, obviously, the amount of distraction and, you can see the discipline that's been tracked, it's a real issue.
Oh, totally
So,
agree.
yeah.
It's like the phone trees versus just say, keep them in.
Yeah,
your
keep it in
locker.
your locker, is what you're saying.
So one of the biggest motivators from that was honestly staff feedback. Again, we had an overwhelming majority of staff that said that they would prefer a phone tree.
Yeah.
So that was where my head went with that. And personally, I've had experience with those in other schools and other districts that have been successful as well. So when I saw that, I was like, that seems like a reasonable move to try and make.
Are students allowed to use the phones at lunch
Yep. And passing time.
and passing?
Mhm.
Is that like, I'm sorry, Ms. Lee, put you on the spot, is that like that at the middle school, that the students can use them at the lunch and passing hours too?
No, we don't allow them in the lunchroom. Students may check their phones, during passing time, but they're not to have, any
So they
applications.
stay in the locker.
Yeah, they stay stored in the locker.
Any other questions on that? Oh, do you see, Ms. Vaughn, like, would you wanna be consistent or like the way that this is laid out from middle to high school? Like, would you wanna do it all the same in both schools, or would you like having it?
I think based upon the feedback that was received, I would really, and I guess too, the push for me, or I guess the nail in the coffin, and just following up with the driving superintendent, they just did the cell phone trees and it was very successful. I guess I was sold on that if we can start honing in. I think to your point, and it's gonna be really a chat with the staff, just to make sure that there's consistency within the classrooms. Because we have some very nice teachers that will allow, there could be some flexibility there, but I think the more consistent we are with that policy, the more successful we're gonna be.
And then I'm not sure if you guys have seen, I know you and I have talked about it, the stuff with the state getting,
I sent stuff in the board report,
Yeah.
the board note this past week, so you could see the update.
yeah, so there's, we could get this in place and they might change it,
Yeah,
whatever.
I just
wants
wanted-
to.
yeah.
Yep, I agree. Any other questions? Thank you so much. Mr. Spirit, do you mind signing that?
Of
I
course,
just, I
yeah.
couldn't see some of the,
Yeah, absolutely. We can send that right over.
thank
Thank
you
you,
so
Mr.
much.
Spear.
Thank you.
Okay, last but certainly not least, our special guest again, Mr.
Y'all thought you
Bruno.
were done with me, man, but I'm back again. I'm like a bad habit.
Mr. Bruno is gonna present on the update for curriculum and the recommendation for the grant, the 35M grant, in line with our dyslexia law and compliance coming up here.
Yeah, I don't have cool gifts and stuff like Mr. Spear does, so I apologize for that. It was up to let me talk with my hands for the next, little while. So we have a new ELA curriculum recommendation to utilize the 35M grant. So a lot to cover, so y'all know I talk fast already, so I just got a lot to say. So we're talking about the history of the 35M grant and its support for early literacy and dyslexia, as well as our recommendation for the new curriculum we should use with this money from the state of Michigan. It's similar to what Kathy shared not so long ago. There's a lot of uncertainty around the amount of dollars we're going to get with this as well, so bear with me with that too. So just a quick bit of background. If you remember back in October, Governor Whitmer signed a bill into law, kind of adding to the early literacy supports. You may have heard it called the dyslexia bill. It really is an early literacy support bill. It will really go into effect in the 27-28 school year, but a lot of the funding mechanisms are on a really tight deadline, and to the point that we got our approved list on June 2nd, and we have a grant due on July 11th telling them what curriculum we would like to pick. So it will be a very quick turnaround on this. So I'm going to talk you through all of that. But the great thing is, $87 million from the state of Michigan for early literacy supports, giving schools the option to choose one of three different buckets of support, either Tier 1 curriculum, that's the curriculum that supports all kiddos, Tier 2 and Tier 3 intervention for those kids who aren't quite yet at grade level, or a science of reading professional development. It is really important to note, and this is going to keep coming back up throughout the next however long I'm up here sharing with you guys, that schools are afforded a variable amount of money, conditional on which bucket they pick from, Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3, or science of reading, and then within that bucket, which curriculum or whatever you pick from there. So we are going with a Tier 1 curriculum because it will serve the largest number of K through 5 students. I think at the end of the day, we want to serve as many kiddos as possible when we're getting free money from the state. I think fiscally, it is the wisest choice that we can make because, I'll share with you in a minute the breakdown of what exactly it looks like, but I think fiscally it will be the wisest choice for us to make to go after a Tier 1 curriculum. It's going to serve the most kids, and we're going to be able to get the largest bang for our buck. So the state, when they came out on June 2nd, they gave us a list of 11 different curriculums. They ranked from 1 through 8. There were some ties within there. It is really important to note, not all of the curriculum on there were comprehensive curriculum. Basically what that means is it didn't have all the core components of phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. Those are the 5 key components you need to learn how to read at an early level, at that early literacy, that K-5 level. We thought it would be fiscally the most prudent to go after a curriculum that is comprehensive, and then if there were pieces within that comprehensive curriculum that we needed to supplement, it would be more fiscally wise to go that route than pick something that only served, for example, phonemic awareness or word recognition, because then we would be looking to figure out something much larger, because at the end of the day, come 27, 28, we are going to be on the hook and be expected to be using one of the curriculum from this list. The other fun piece of this, just to add one more fun wrinkle, is that in January there will be a more comprehensive list of curriculum added to this, but that is 6 months past the time when we can apply for funding, so we really got to get after this and make a choice by July 11th. So I mentioned that there's a variable amount. If you look at the base award, everybody who applies for this grant, and not every district in the state is necessarily going to apply for this grant, everybody who applies for a Tier 1 curriculum like us, 30 grand. You add to that, if you pick something that is from that funded list, like we are planning on doing, because again, being fiscally responsible and taking care of our kids, $44 at minimum. So what that means, a lot of numbers I'm going to throw at you, so please pause me if you have questions as I go. Base award, we're going to get $30,000. That per pupil minimum, $44. Roughly right now, just pulling off Power School where we are today, again, these numbers will change as we talked about earlier today. 663 K-5 students, that would give us $29,000 there for a total of $59,172. But, I feel like the ShamWow guy, but there's a catch here. Assuming not every district in the state goes out for this grant, or assuming some of the districts, there's a lot of larger districts that have adopted new curriculum over the last couple of years that are on that list already. They may go for a Tier 2 and Tier 3 intervention curriculum. They may go for professional development. They may just say, yeah, we've got money, we're good. So our money could only go up from there. The catch again is we don't know how much that's going to be, but we know we're going to get at least this amount. And I'll talk you through some different scenarios surrounding this as we go. But the thing is, we should only see that money go up. Again, all of the funding is distributed conditional on which bucket you pick from and then what you pick within the bucket. The curriculum we're going to talk about that we picked is very high up on the list, so that should also help our funding within there. Again, picking what's best for our kids and what is going to help us be the best financial stewards for our funds here at Almont Community Schools. Again, I can't say it enough, and you heard it from Ms. Merrifield earlier too. It's a challenge when we don't know how much exactly we're going to get, when the state is still making decisions after they've put deadlines out there for all of us. Adding one more piece to this. If you look at Nexus, which is where we submit all of our grant funds, it talks about, that top screenshot up there is from Nexus. It says per pupils, 35M is the formula grant that will result in an equal amount per pupil based on the number of pupils in the district or intermediate district and grades pre-K through 12 based on the fall 2024 student count. So that's pre-K through 12, how they're going to base it. But if you go to the state's website, it talks about an LEA would receive a per pupil amount equal to their total enrollment to select their chosen tools and materials for their pre-K through 5. I'm not a math genius, but those are two different numbers. I was a social studies teacher, not a history teacher, or not a math teacher, but I can tell those two things are different. So as we were doing calculations to factor in how much this is all going to cost in the budget, we were basing it off the K-5, just because that is less money. I'd rather be pleasantly surprised than unpleasantly surprised. Realistically, though, we will find out the exact amount of dollars that we're going to get sometime between that July 11th deadline to submit this grant and September 15th, when we have to submit our formal budget to the Michigan Department of Education. I'm happy to come back and share what that exact amount will look like once we get there. But again, we will not know until the State Department of Education shares that. Adding one more piece to this, I mentioned it before, that in January they're also they're listing a larger, more expanded curriculum list. One of the other components of that early literacy bill that came out last October is screening for students and assessment for characteristics of dyslexia, early reading deficiencies. That list is going to come out in January as well. We're going to go through a similar process. The curriculum we are recommending does have an additional component for purchase, because curriculum providers like to make money, that would likely be on that approved list, just based off what we're seeing on the list that have already come out. So just to kind of wrap up this first portion, and then I'll pause for questions because I've already talked a lot and there's a lot that went into this. Great opportunity, obviously, anytime the state of Michigan would like to give us dollars to purchase things for our kiddos that are going to benefit our kids, heck yeah, man, we've got to take advantage of that. Great chance to upgrade, we're just going to take money, opportunities. The challenge though, you guys know when we make a curriculum decision, we'd like to have the opportunity to pilot it, try it in different forms, really dive into that curriculum, spend a good solid year or so looking at that. We had effectively 5 weeks to do that. If we want to take advantage of these dollars and make this happen, to make sure we're meeting the requirements set out by the state for 27-28, we've got to make a choice in a very short amount of time. Add on that the uncertainty of variable funding. It does create a fair degree of uncertainty around all of this, but I promise you, we sat in this actually very room last week and had some of the best teachers you'll ever get to know. I mean, you could pick any K-5 teacher, or any K-12 teacher, any of these amazing people in this district, and they'd make a great recommendation. But it is a challenge when you're doing that under short amount of times. The other thing too, you may have heard of the 35N grant if you're really plugged into the funding and everything around this. This is a very competitive grant with hundreds of thousands of dollars at stake. We considered going after that as just an Almont Community Schools. However, the ISD is going after a grant that would benefit the entire Lapeer County. And given the economy of scale that the ISD will bring, we wanted to throw our support behind them to try to have the best opportunity to get something for our students here in Almont. So I've talked a lot already. I'll pause if folks have questions about the grant itself, the background on all of that. I know I went really quickly, so I'd love to shut up and let you guys ask any questions you might have.
Mrs. Smith? You keep saying we, so you discuss this with your educators, or who's the we?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's actually the next piece I'm going to dive into is the process that we did to do that. We had a great ELA DCC team meet over the last couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mrs. Smith? How long do you expect this curriculum to last?
That is a phenomenal question as well. Yes, that's a good question. I appreciate that. So I'll break down some different scenarios. Ideally, we go after like 5 to 7 years of curriculum. That's how you get the best bang for your buck there. They give you the best discounts. Everybody knows that it takes a few years to really learn a new curriculum, learn anything new. So ideally 5 to 7 years. A lot of that is going to come down to the funding that we get from MDE or funding that we make up from internal accounts, from additional grants, additional sources. So I would love to, in an ideal world, to me 7 years would be what we do, or at least 5 years. All right, I will keep on keeping on because I want to make sure I address Ms. Fred's really great question there about the process that we went to this. Our board policy 2521A outlines the process for picking a new curriculum. It asks for at least 2 teachers who are affected by that curriculum to be a part of this. We had way more than 2 teachers. We had Ms. Lewis and Ms. Vaughn were part of this too. I'd say we had roughly 15 or 16 teachers in this room representing the K-5 grade bands. To then make a recommendation to myself and Ms. Lewis as the principals in those K-5 grades. And now here I am making a recommendation to our superintendent and to our Board of Education around this. It also instructs us to consider a host of factors. That was on our agenda that we started our meeting with to keep this in mind, as this was a key part of picking a new curriculum for our team. So we sat right here last Tuesday and Wednesday. We had some great conversations with a couple of different reps. Again, we only invited reps in from those comprehensive curriculum providers because to be the best stewards of these finances coming our way, we really wanted to focus on a comprehensive curriculum. We had some really great conversations, some great discussions. The quality of our educators in this district. Everybody came in with really great ideas, great recommendations, great thoughts. We had to pick one. In an ideal world, we could do all kinds of different things, but we had to pick one really good curriculum. So I think we came out of here with a really strong recommendation for our board to adopt as our K-5 primary curriculum. But just a really phenomenal team of there. Many of your kids have probably had these really great teachers. I'm not going to go through this whole long timeline of things, but in addition to that, those meetings we had last Tuesday and Wednesday, at the start of May, I shared with our team and Ms. Lewis's team here at the middle school just what this grant would look like, what the potential curricular options were going to be. Once we knew what the curriculum, the different curriculas that we could look at were, Ms. Schulte, our literacy consultant from the ISD, who we work really closely with, got a lot of different curriculum samples here, so all of our teachers had the opportunity to review as much as we can. The challenge, as you guys know, is with that tight of a timeline, with finding out on June 2nd, needing to get a grant submitted by July 11th and wanting to make sure we follow our board procedures of getting this approved by everybody here. We needed to make this on a really quick timeline. Again, it's not an ideal timeline by any stretch, but again, I trust the quality of our teachers who, we all entrust our kiddos to go learn from every day. So again, I think we made a good choice, but again, it was a little bit quicker of a process. But again, we tried to get as many voices in this as we could. Any questions before I talk about the curriculum we chose? All right. So, before I do that though, I have to say, we picked a really great curriculum. But the thing that drives student success more than anything else in this district is the teachers. You've got several of them sitting in this room. Many of you have had kids learn from them, many of you have worked with them, and you know the quality of the teachers that we have. I mean, you could give them a stick and some sand and they would teach kids how to read. But we want to empower them with the highest quality curriculum so they can obviously have the best opportunity to learn. But again, we couldn't be more blessed with the great teachers that we have in this district who are going to implement this and do an amazing job of it. So we ultimately chose Amplify, core language or core knowledge language arts curriculum. Amplify is the curriculum provider. Core knowledge language arts is the specific curriculum within there. I'm going to reference the science of reading a lot over the next couple of minutes, so I want to just give a really high-level overview of what that is. Science of reading really breaks down how kiddos learn how to read. There's two ways to look at it. There's a simple review of reading down here in purple. What it effectively says is kids learn how to read by learning language comprehension and word recognition, and those two things come together to create skilled readers. Scarborough's reading rope is the much more detailed version of this. Amplify CKLA is really strongly based in Scarborough's reading rope, and that tells us that when you're learning language comprehension at those younger grades, you've got to weave together background knowledge, vocabulary, language structures, while you're also learning, blending together phonological awareness, decoding, etc. And then you've got to start weaving those things together. The more kids are learning these skills together, not in isolation, the stronger readers we're going to produce. Again, you could walk into our classrooms and you know our teachers are going to do this regardless of what they're doing, but Amplify CKLA does a really phenomenal job. I won't read through all of these amazing factors as to why we chose this, but they really weave this together nicely. Their skills and their knowledge build upon each other throughout the year and year over year, K through 5. I do want to shout out to one of the things we appreciated about this was they have a program available to the young pre-K program that we could make available to our young 5s to give Ms. Landishire and that group a curriculum. It was the highest rated one by the Michigan Department of Education. It's aligned with the science of reading research, and it really develops a strong K-1 foundation that our 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers can build on as well, so that by the time they get to our lovely high school English teachers, we have the strongest readers, writers, learners possible. And then it is worth noting too, several of our peer districts nearby, Armada, Romeo, Chip Valley, Utica, have either adopted this or in the process of adopting this. The great benefit for us with that is we can write some money into our Title I or Title IV budgets to get teachers embedded opportunities to go down there and see this in action so they can see how other teachers are utilizing this before we ask them to roll that out. Just a little bit about the format. I won't spend hours on this. I could, but I think everybody wants to go home eventually tonight. Again, it's based on that Scarborough's reading rope. K2, you see this in, it's got two components, skills and knowledge. Skills, it's teaching those building blocks of reading. It's got a block where they're learning encoding and decoding, word recognition, just those basic things. And then they also are getting a knowledge block where they're reading text. They're using decodable text. We saw down in Romeo, a few of us went down and got to see this in action a few weeks ago. And they had kindergartners reading like full-on books. They look like, they look like chapter books, but they've got, it looks, the words within there are very much at their level, but it was really impressive to see the level that they were reading this with. By third, fourth, and fifth grade, it's not broken down in that skills and knowledge anymore. It's just a knowledge section because you're really weaving together that reading rope from Scarborough's reading rope. But they are still teaching advanced phonics and grammar skills throughout. Instructionally, personally as a former history teacher, I love that it's got some basis in science and history and some texts that are outside of just traditional ELA text. It's got straight up explicit instruction in phonics and word recognition at those younger levels, which the recent research is showing us is hugely important in the development of early literacy. It's got some writing processes and skills and handwriting built right into the curriculum, which is really nice to see, so that we're weaving everything together. The more we're learning these things in concert, the stronger we're going to be. On the back-end support, I will say Amplify has been incredible to work with, which is really nice to see. We've gone to them for different quotes, different ideas. I know from talking to some of the folks down in Romeo, when they had some concerns about some things in the curriculum and things that were going out there, Romeo has very much, Amplify has very much come to their aid and have been willing to sit down and talk with them in support. It's great to see they've got some built-in scaffolds for our kids who aren't quite at grade level yet, as they're building out, or those kids who are, tier 2 and tier 3 or multilingual learners, and that is really huge. I mentioned this before, it was the highest rated one on MD, according to the Michigan Department of Ed's curriculum committee that they put together as part of that bill as well. That is nice to see, both on an intellectual academic side, that it is the highest one rated. That also means, if you think back to what we talked about, I've been up here for a while, y'all know I talk a lot, that means we will get the highest possible level of funding for choosing this curriculum as well. No curriculum is perfect, though. Again, teachers make the curriculum, and there's always going to be some concerns with any curriculum. One of the things that was frequently heard in some of the Amplified curriculum, particularly the second edition, we would be getting the third edition, was there were some texts in there that were not necessarily always suitable to community standards. For example, we used this at a district I worked at for a while back in Idaho, and we had some of those concerns about a really heavily focus on world religions and some different things talked about in second grade. Amplify's really gone a long way to address that. They've offered a this or that option. So, for example, that world religions text in second grade, I think it's got a fairy tales option instead to use as the foundational text, because they want to make sure they're listening to districts like ours who have different community standards than maybe like a Wayne County might have, and I think that is really important. Their team, again, like they were in Romeo, has shared how responsive they'll be. And then most, I think, importantly, we plan on, were we to get this curriculum, order it in October, receive it in our hands in January. That would allow Ms. Lewis and the 4th and 5th grade teachers and myself and the K-3 teachers to really spend a semester digging into this curriculum, digging into the text. And if there are texts in there that aren't going to meet our community standards, that aren't going to fit with our community values, we can take those out and replace them with something that would be stronger for our kids and more responsive to who we are as a team. And you guys know our teachers, again, they know our district, they know our kids and what's going to work best for us. So before I dive into the costs, I know I just talked a lot, and again, y'all know I talk fast, about the CKLA itself as a curriculum. Do you guys have questions about what the curriculum entails, any details of that?
Mrs. Smith? So this is basically spoon-fed curriculum to the teachers would use. Did you compare and contrast that with like the science of reading PD, where then we rely on the skills of the teachers to implement the science of reading?
So considering if we should use apply for a science of reading grant as opposed to, it was certainly something considered. My recommendation pretty much out of the gate was, in order to make sure we're going to get a curriculum that's going to be on that approved list, we thinking about our baseline kind of budget, that we needed to go get a really strong curriculum. For those of you who don't know Jeannie Schulte as well, she's a literacy coach who works with us. She's paid for largely by the ISD. Her and I have already talked about delivering professional development in the science of reading to give teachers a strong basis in the science of reading. One of the things that Amplify does as well, if you really dive deeply into the budget from them, is they have a 90-minute science of reading professional development as well that we could do as early as the 25-26 school year to set that foundation. So I'm with you, Mr. Burns. The value of that science of reading professional development is really huge to build our teachers' skill set. I think you couple with some of our internal PD we'll be able to do, coupled with a strong curriculum like this, we're going to get the largest bang for our buck.
So, but couldn't teachers learn the science of reading and then use their own materials that they come up with, like their own creativity and their own materials, rather than kind of this, like, again, spoon-fed?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because for those of you who haven't dug a ton into this, if you ask teachers down in like Romeo or Armada who are using this, they'll tell you it is much more structured. There's a lot of slides. It's coming from charter school world. It feels very, there's a little bit of a chartery school aspect. I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just a little bit more structured. The other piece of this, though, is by 27, 28, we're going to need to have curriculum that's from that, expanded approved list that comes out in January. Even if Wonders, which is our main foundation for K3, K4, is on there, it is likely to be the newest version of Wonders, and ours is, I believe, 2 editions older than that. So I think to be good stewards of our fiscal situation, going out and getting a strong comprehensive curriculum would be our strongest choice. Of course, within any curriculum, our teachers, they are very wise, they're very skilled, they're very strong, and building in that science of reading PD within there is going to enable them to take that curriculum and make it their own. If they look at a unit or a way of within there and say, I got to adjust this to fit the needs of my kids, I'm going to do that, because I know some districts are very much like, you're gonna teach this curriculum like this, like this, like this, like this. I don't think that's necessarily the culture. Actually, I would say it's not the culture here. Our expectation is we gave you a curriculum to use, but then you make it your own. You know your kids better than I do, than folks at Amplify, than the folks in Lansing do. So you take that and you make it your own. And what you did in October 2025 is going to be different than you do in October 26. So even with a very scripted, more scripted curriculum, I still see our teachers really taking that and running with it to make it fit for their kiddos in their community.
It's good to hear you say that. In full transparency, my wife teaches Romeo second grade, so she's been doing CTLA, and it's a little bit more rigid there.
I will say, from I don't know which school your wife teaches at compared to the one we went to, and one of the things they shared was their principal's expectation there was like you're going to follow it like to the T, and like one teacher's teaching here, the teacher next door should be saying almost the exact same words at the same time. I think if I went into any of our grade levels and said that, I think I'd be out on the street because our teachers would not appreciate that, and I think I should be because the art of teaching is very much alive here, and teachers having that freedom and flexibility to make it their own, using this as a foundation. Curriculum is it's a tool. It's like a computer. It's a foundation. It gives us the opportunity. It gives us text. It gives us knowledge. But what makes a curriculum great is how teachers adjust that to fit their kids. I think that was one of the larger concerns our team had as well, Mr. Burns, was that like this feels very structured. Are you guys you give us that freedom? And absolutely, we trust our teachers. We know how good they are to do that. Thank you. That's a great question. Other questions about the curriculum itself? All right. So, I think Mr. Burrow, you asked earlier about the length of the quotes that we would look at. We sought out 1, 3, 5, and 7-year quotes. Between me and y'all, and anybody watching this online, a 1-year quote would not be a great idea because it's going to be the least cost effective, and we're going to be replacing it really quickly again or looking at it again. As we sought out quotes, we looked at the materials themselves, professional development that the curriculum provider would provide, because it's really important that we get professional development and training on this curriculum as we're rolling out anything new. That test was really non-negotiable. And then just any other tools with that. I do want to note our second choice was HMH's Into Learning. That was the 6th ranked curriculum on there. For a 3-year quote, they came back $11,000 cheaper. But I do want to note that because of the ranking within the state's list from their curriculum committee, we will very much likely get more than $18.33 more per pupil for picking the first-ranked curriculum as opposed to the 6th-ranked curriculum. So that would largely be a wash, if not a financial boon. Again, it's not all about the finances, obviously. We want to pick the best curriculum for our kiddos while balancing that with being good financial stewards of our community. I don't want to get in trouble with Ms. Merrifield for spending too much money. So there's a lot that goes into the price breakdown. So I'm going to stand over here so I can move my screen around a little bit. But what it came down to, and remember, if we get the $44 per pupil, that's the minimum we're going to get at a $30,000 baseline. That would mean we would get $59,172. That's not going to fund, I don't think, any curriculum in the whole unit. Very few curriculums would cover that. So just to give a quick reference, the total cost for a 1 year of just the curriculum and the professional development, $113,000. You take that to a 3-year, it's $156,000. 5-year, $193,000. 7-year, $200,000. Let's call it $229,000. So, Mr. Burrow, when you ask about the length that we're looking for, obviously, yes, the length would be great, but considering the financial side of this is really important. So what I did, because I don't think we're only going to get $44 in curriculum. $44 per student, get that $59,000. Is what I did is break it down, roughly adding $25 each time to give us some benchmarks, some signposts along the way at a time. And then calculate it out, what is it, if we only got that $44 per student, for a 3-year subscription, we would be $97,000 in the hole. If we get 75, 76 in the hole. So that's going to be, I could stand here all day and just read numbers at you guys. Y'all are adults, you don't want to hear me do that. So, to kind of break it down to simplify it just a little bit, if we are getting between $44 per student and per pupil and $150 per student and per pupil, we would need to take a really hard look at what elements of CKLA we would want to purchase. We would consider, maybe we just purchase a K2 curriculum, and then when that full list comes out in January, we see what other pieces are on there. For example, we've been using a program called UFly as an intervention curriculum. It is approved as a full curriculum by the state. It only really covers phonemic awareness and word recognition, but that could supplement in there. There's other pieces that we could supplement in there. They may have some more free type curriculums on there as well. My hope is that we're not in this boat and that we have to do that. Again, I will come back to you guys with my next recommendation on how we approach that if we are in this $44 per student to $150 per student range. If we get up into this $150 per student to $200 per student, looking at the actual breakdown of this, once you hit $175 per student in that per pupil allotment, that would leave us just about $10,000 short of being able to purchase this for 3 years. We could look at a line item in our general budget. We could look at other grants. It would at least open up the conversation and make it a much closer conversation within there. You hit to that $200 per student allotment. Now we're in the place where we could fully fund a 3-year curriculum, this curriculum for 3 years. And then, after you get to that 3 years, we need to obviously look at our budget, how we're budgeting for curriculum in future years. Because I'm going to be honest, I don't know, so nobody quote me on this, I don't know if this is the last time we're going to get curriculum funding from the state of Michigan, but states don't oftentimes just give money to schools for curriculum. It's not their most common practice either. Obviously, the more funds that we get, the more opportunities that we... Disconcerting, again, I want to really emphasize, we do not know how much money we are going to get. Amplify gives us the strongest possible comprehensive curriculum, which is, again, number one is student support. A very close second is obviously making sure we're fiscally responsible with the money that we're getting. Amplify is also going to give us the largest amount of funds within there. Student support first, funds is the second place, so we got to consider both of those, and I think Amplify really meets that mark the closest. My recommendation for this, we need to by July 11th, we've got to submit this grant. We don't submit this grant for a curriculum, we get nothing. Or we don't submit this grant, we get $0. I think that would be a gross negligence on my part as a grant person, as a principal. I think it would be a gross negligence on our whole district if we didn't at least get something. My recommendation is that we submit and we ask for Amplify and see how much dollars they come back with us. Because we submit that application before July 11th for that 35M. Sometime between July 11th and September 15th, when we have to submit a formal budget, they come back to us with, hey, you got $100 per pupil, you got $700 per pupil. Man, that would be amazing. I don't think they're going to do that. You got $47 per pupil. Then we can put together a budget. We can make those hard decisions of which pieces we're going to go for. I hope we don't have to do that, but hope is not a strategy. So that's why I tried to outline for everybody, which pieces we would try to prioritize if that's the case. And then we would submit that budget by September 15th with all of that in there. But I do want to emphasize, if we don't approve and submit something, then we get nothing. It doesn't even give us the opportunity to come back and have those conversations down the road. So I do think that is really important. So that's really all I got. My ask is that we do approve CKLA as our curriculum. Obviously, we consider all the different options once we know what the money is, but I do think we need to approve it so we're able to submit and go after this grant. That is my recommendation, but I'm here to answer questions, here to have discussion. And thank you all for your time.
Question?
Mrs. Smith.
Mr. Wade?
Mr. Bruno, thank you for the presentation. Say we go through all this process and do you have a time frame in your back of your mind in terms of implementing a curriculum where you say, yes, it's working, no, it's not, we gotta look for something else? Is there a time frame?
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question. So thinking kind of timeline, is largely a 2.5-year timeline. It's interesting, the state had a really condensed timeline at the start and then a much more extended one as we go. So, let's say we get this, we order something in October because we'll get this money with our state aid. the rep I spoke to, she shared with me, you would have access to the website, you'd have some PD available, you'd have teacher kits and everything by January, so we could start with some professional development. Ms. Lewis and I on our teams, we could sit down, dive into that curriculum, figure out like, okay, this is looking good. 26, 27, I would say we need to give this a go. We need to figure out, hey, do we like this curriculum? What pieces are working really well, what aren't? If 26, 27 is a huge flop, 1 year does not a curriculum make, I think. I would think we need to go into 27, 28, maybe give it a 2-year at the old college, try for 2 years. And then after that, 27, 28 is the first year we have to be implementing a curriculum from this. If after, half a year of diving into the curriculum, picking out its best pieces, a year to just kind of figure it out, a second year to implement those changes that our amazing teachers would find. If we're, January of, the 27, 28 school year, so I guess it'll be January of 2028, I think if we're at that point and we're like, this isn't going to work, we need to go back to that approved list and say, we got to do something different to do what's best for our kids.
Mr. Bruno, I just wanted to thank you. I think Ms. Lewis is still in the room. Just fantastic work. I was very impressed with how everything was pulled together last week with the teachers. And thank you to Mrs. Schulte, too, a special thank you. She's done an incredible amount of work and legwork on this. So really just fabulous conversation. I was glad I could be a part of it for part of that day. So thank you. But I think you did a great job bringing this together in such a tight timeline. Again, all of I feel like your stellar work too with the 35M grant, additional grants. Mr. Bruno, we can't thank you enough for looking out and again, helping us be fiscally responsible. So thank you for your recommendation.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. And if you see any of those K-5 teachers out and about over the summer, please thank them for their time. They put a lot of, we had teachers giving up part of their field day break time to come in and talk with Ms. Schulte and review curriculum pieces. So again, all credit to our teachers and to our team because.
But Mr. Bruno, when you bring food in, it goes a little bit
It
farther.
does go a long way.
Remember that.
I learned this year you got to bring
Next
snacks to
year.
meetings because I didn't used to do that. So.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have to ask the standard question, can we get a copy of your?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Always.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're moving on to building and site with Mr. Jason.
Just as a reminder, Building and Site, chairs Mr. Burrow and Mr. Burns and Mr. Wade are on that committee.
We're well underway for our summer maintenance to include making sure that those classrooms, the switch, Ms. Porter and the GSRP rooms will be ready in time. Touching base on some projects, OP window replacement did begin this past Monday. It's going quite well. They will be done well before summer school starts. The middle school gym is coming along quite nicely. It's already been sanded. They're painting the new lines and logos as of yesterday, so they're not quite done with that, but they'll be on time for their deadline of July 9th. The high school fire panel replacement, we're looking at wrapping that up next week. Wrapping it up in terms of we will do the switch over and be on the new system. One of the last things that we'll need is the state to come out and do an inspection, so we don't have any timelines on that. The door replacement project for the high school will begin the week of the 23rd. They plan on wrapping that up, just taking a week to do that. So that will be completed as well. Some other district projects for Rakeen, the district, we've already begun identifying the different classifications of clearances and the coring of the lot cores has begun for at least OP in the middle school. And we'll work on those as we go. Hopefully those two schools will be done by the end of July, which would then leave us August to concentrate on high school. The high school is going to be a larger project. There's just a lot more to it. So yeah.
Here's my keys, just to let you know, all high school related.
You have before you, I put out the RFP for the Filter First grant that we were awarded from the state of Michigan so that we could be in compliance with that. I did receive 4 bids. The first bid was $132,340. The second bid was $127,499. The third bid was $124,000. And the fourth bid came in at well below at $55,075. That fourth bid didn't necessarily follow the RFP. They have a few exclusions, so I didn't take those, especially since they were almost $69,000 below the next tier of bids. So I looked at those three bids that came in, which would be the 132, the 127, and the 124. My recommendation would be for Thumb Cooling and Heating. They're the company that most recently did the exhaust fan project at the high school. It worked fantastic in our school setting. They completed that job quite fast. They've done other work within our area. I believe they just replaced the boilers at Dryden School. So not only with us, but within our area too, become recommended. So for the $127,499 would be my recommendation. And what that will give us is 6 single water fill drinking stations at OP. That will give us 7 single drinking water bottle fill stations at the middle school. And for the high school, it will give us 5 single water bottle fill stations at the high school, and then 3 bi-level water bottle fill stations, which would consist of 1 water bottle fill, but it would have a tiered, 2-tiered drinking fountain station. So, and then that would put us well within compliance and really ahead of the deadline that they put for June 30th of 2026. The only thing that we'd be waiting on is wait for the state to possibly come up with some more money for some inline filtration. But in the short term, Mr. Brindley assisted me with completing another grant that we haven't heard back from yet. Moving on to the track project, or any questions on that RFP to this point?
Real quick, does the grant cover the full cost of that?
Yes, and then also too, so we were awarded $139,650, and they kind of broke it down and segmented it. They changed along the way. Initially, it was for inline filtration as well as water fill stations. Then they said, no, it's only for water fill stations. I have an additional allotted $7,600 to buy replacement filters for the stations, which will, I'll be able to shop around and do that myself. So to get multiple quotes from supply houses and whatnot, to be able to make those purchases. It also allows for $600 for what I call point of access filters, or tap mounted, for, like the high school cooking tap boundaries. And then of course the kitchens too, but, Eagle still, from what I'm hearing from my MSBO meetings and some of the filter first meetings, is that there's the potential for more money to come out. They're kind of building this as a flying plane, so we'll wait and see.
Okay, thank you.
On to the track project. It was discovered during the removal of the latex mat that there was some areas of concern, which then prompted Star Trek Enterprise to call in what they call a proof roll that occurred on Wednesday, the 11th. The asphalt company brought in a vehicle that weighed approximately 36,000 pounds. There was a group of us, to include 3 board members, that we walked the track while they drove this extremely heavy vehicle, which was a simulation of when they would actually lay asphalt. And we were able to really pinpoint those areas of concern, which it was suggested to us, rather than, it would be cheaper for the district if we were to get contractors to come in, and it would require cutting out some areas of asphalt, compacting most of the areas. There were 2 larger areas that were identified, one at what would be the mobilization or the entry onto the track, as well as over on the southeast side, where we would not only remove some asphalt, but we would extract the subbase down to about 12 inches, bring it back with 6 inches of limestone, and then they would patch that before doing So I had my last contractor in today, so that makes 3 that I've had since last Wednesday. I'm just waiting to get the results back from that, and I have not heard back from ACE because there would also be a charge for them to come back and patch those areas before the overlay. So there were some costs that we didn't see at the time, or were not, they weren't there. So when we walked the track, and when I presented to you guys, to include saying that, of course, the way the RFP was written, and our goal was to achieve a competition-ready track, it was based on the information that we had on the time when we walked the track. It was identified in the one quote of, up to 200 lineal feet of repairs. It wasn't until they put the heavy machinery on it that we were able to find these weak points. So they call it refraction. For those that walked the scene, it was very interesting to see. So we'll have those numbers hopefully here shortly before the end of the week, so that we can then make a determination of how to proceed.
Mr. Brewer. So thank you, Jason, for pursuing that. I think we knew when we approved this that there was some risk with the foundation there. So this is, I assume all this will be coming out of general fund to whatever the additional.
Yeah, we depleted our savings.
Yep, yep.
And our encumbered, so we have it in the general fund. That's correct.
Mr. Earl, can I ask a clarifying question?
Absolutely.
Even with this little bit of a setback, are we still on target to have it done when we had initially, as much as we initially anticipated?
Right now we are, yes. And it's, there's a few more moving parts that have been added to this. Of course, schedules, Mother Nature always holds the last laugh, so to speak. So it is, right now, what everybody's saying is, get this approved, get this done, and we can continue on with this. Part of this project was, since that the track wasn't necessarily a competition-ready track, they were getting in ahead of most of the other schools. We were 3 weeks ahead of everyone. So, yes, that's what they're telling me right now, but, things fill up, scheduling, so that's where, I've already had 3 people out, so we'll get these numbers by the end of the week, and we can get some decisions.
Yeah, I just wondered if it was
Yes.
going to be a long, push it
No,
out further.
we're still shooting, luckily we didn't start on June 9th, or we'd be really behind,
Yeah.
so that helped a little bit.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Jason, for, again, all your hard work, board members coming out, and I think all of you have been, really, keeping an eye on that track, but we did have Mr. Wade, Mrs. Roterius, and Mr. Burns out when we were doing this test roll. So it was very interesting to watch, but I really appreciate the work that's gone into this and the follow-through, and Jason will just continue to, plug on here and plug through. So thank you very much. We're going to move on to finance with Kay.
Just as a reminder, Mr. Wade is the chair, and Ms. Fred and myself are on that committee.
Start with the checks written. This one. Do you have any?
I don't.
This
I
one.
didn't have any this month. Kathy, you've done such a good job answering all my questions. I'm trying to find more.
As a reminder, we'll do a few just so it helps with our audits. Sorry, my writing. 46133.
$46133.
Yep.
Crosstown Wireless for $168. Looks like cloud service for access control, cloud service for $2.
46168.
That is, let's see, to Saddleback Educational Inc. for $669.20. Phonics decodable readers. So for the middle school. There's a list of high-low books attached also. Okay.
And the last one, 46172.
That is to Schiffler Equipment for $501.16. That is for a damaged desk by a student. And there was a reimbursement for that desk by the student.
Let's take a moment to read through the account balances. Any questions? And then also the student activity accounts. Good. On to state aid.
I had performed the cash flow analysis that is required to determine whether we need to borrow. And I'm happy to report that it appears that we do not need to borrow a state aid note this year. I just wanted to mention too, I am having that confirmed by Troon, as they always double check the state aid note, cash flow sheets. And I keep checking my email still, have not heard back from them. But as soon as I do, I'll let you guys know. But it does not look like we need to borrow through the cash flow analysis that I did. And having said that, I wanted to remind you that we did pay off a bond last May and a bond this May. So we paid off two pretty big debt items, and so it helps our cash flow so much, so just want to let you know.
That's great news.
Yeah.
Thank you.
For everybody.
Yeah, that's great news. We'll keep our fingers crossed on that. So Jason talked about the drinking fountain and the water fill station, provided that, so this is our fact sheet with the purchase of and contract for. Single items of supplies, materials, or equipment exceeds the amount designated by statute, the district shall obtain competitive bids. Policy 6320. We've received the results from the drinking fountain, water bottle fill stations, RFP. 4 companies sent proposals, and they have been both reviewed and verified by Mr. Frederick. Mr. Frederick recommends the district utilizes them cooling and heating. The vendors are Contrast Mechanical with a total of $124,000, CSM Mechanical $55,075, LA Building Service $132,340, and Thumb Cooling and Heating $127,499.
Good. It's 3.
3-0. Thank you. Moving on to policy.
Yes, for policy, we have Mrs. Rosarius as the chair and Mr. Eckert, myself are on there.
The Board of Education may agree to a resignation or retirement at any time after a replacement suitable to the school administration and the board is obtained, provided that the circumstances underlying the resignation or retirement are valid in the opinion of the board and warrant a search for replacement. Mrs. Mary Campbell has resigned from the district after 20 years as a teacher at Almont High School. Mrs. Nicole Lawhoff has resigned from her position as media center aide at Almont High School to work full-time at her other job. Ms. Katie Ann Murphy has resigned from her position as special education paraprofessional at Almont High School to pursue another career path. Veronica Castillo has resigned from her position as recess aide at Orchard Primary. Thank you. All right, moving on to new hires. The Board of Education approves all personnel. With the retirement of Kelly Edley, Mr. Spears is pleased to recommend Mrs. Laura Livermore for the position of Counseling Secretary for Almont High School. Mrs. Livermore comes to us with a wealth of experience working for the Department of Health and Human Services and also a parent of an ACS student. Ms. Cynthia Howe will be joining Almont High School as the new interventionist. Mr. Spears is excited to welcome Ms. Howe with years of experience in education as a classroom teacher, administrator, and interventionist. Ms. Maren Luxgrant has joined the staff at Orchard Primary and will be a new paraprofessional in the MOSI classroom. Mrs. Kimberly Zondervan is also joining the staff at Orchard Primary as a new lunch recess aide and comes to us with years of experience in a school setting. Mr. Bruno is also excited to welcome recent graduate, Ms. Katie Hediger, into fold at Orchard Primary. Katie helped out during lunches for the last week of school and is looking forward to working at Orchard Primary in the coming year as a paraprofessional. Mr. Eric Johnson will be taking on the role of varsity girls golf coach this coming year, along with his teaching role at Almont Middle School. Mr. Johnson has been employed by Almont Community Schools for many years and has been helping with the golf program as an assistant for several years. Tennis coach, Gexmeyer, varsity boys. Any questions? What's that? Thank you. Moving on to our summer tech student workers. The Board of Education approves the employment of all personnel. The technology director has used summer tech help for the past few years to ready the technology for coming year. This year, Mr. Merkland is recommending the students on the sheet listed below. All students then are highly recommended by Mr. Merkland, both for their professionalism and experience. By hiring this summer help, we can ready the district technology for coming year. Thank you. Next up, we have secretarial contract. The Board of Education approves the employment contracts of all personnel. The secretaries of the buildings have an association, and as such, the association bargains their contract. The attached contract and all changes have been discussed with the board at previous meetings. The proposed 2-year contract is competitive and appropriate.
Yeah, so, it would, likely would be dependent on the budget. Right?
Depending on
The budget.
Budget. Oh, on Monday night,
Yeah.
okay. And just to be clear, I just want to make sure, in all 3 scenarios, it was embedded, all the contracts. So I just want to make sure. Thank you. Thank you. Moving on to non-rep contracts, the Board of Education, the next one here. The Board of Education approves the employment contracts of all personnel. The non-representative employees outlined in the benefits booklet presented have contracts that expire on July 1st. In accordance with recommendations from the ORS, a benefits booklet has been prepared to outline pay scales and other fringe benefits for employees that are not in bargaining groups.
Mrs. Raterius, a clarifying question. Mrs. Vaughn, this is not in our typical process, and it says in their recommendation from the ORS, can we get that link to the recommendations that this should be the process type thing? That would be first. Second, clarifying question, has that booklet been run past legal?
The final product, I'd have to go back. I know that I've been working with Ryan Troon Ryan Murray from Troon the entire time working through contracts. I would have to look back to see if I looked and scanned him the final contract. So, but I certainly can do that. It's everything that we've been taking and sharing with him along the way.
And third, clarifying, do we have comparables to compare to for these?
For the non-rep,
For the non-reps, for these positions,
I believe,
opposing districts? It's just our practice for principals, superintendents, teachers, we always have a list of comparables. We talked about this during
Yep. I know Kathy's
negotiation
been not
time.
working with, I know Kathy's been working with, and Laura and myself, we, when I was even actually doing the secretary contract, we were going and reaching out to the other districts, to your point, so we have been researching our locals.
So Jenna, we are also shared those to say, okay, we are on par, to get a visual of, okay, these are the
Sharing some of those comparisons with you. Anything else? No. Thank you. Okay, next is teacher change in pay. In order to be eligible to advance from one lane on the salary schedule to a higher lane, a teacher must make written proof of the completion of courses and or degree requirements in the form of an official transcript of credits from the institution from which the credits were earned. So this is in the master agreement between the Board of Education and the Almont Education Association. Laura Toner is moving from masters to masters plus 15. We also, breaking news, we have somebody who's also going to be submitting, as long as we have all that paperwork, you could have 2 teacher names on one day, same lane, the masters to masters plus 15. All set? Thank you. Moving on to our 2026 trip. The Board of Education approves all student trips which require an overnight stay or out-of-state travel, policy 2340. Mrs. Blum would like to organize a trip to take students to see different parts of the world. This next trip will be to England and Ireland. The trip is through EFT Tours and will be guided from day one until they leave to come back. The trip will provide an excellent opportunity for students to expand and deepen recognition and appreciation of Irish and English cultures, as well as provide a great opportunity to experience multinational cultures and languages. Excellent. There should be something, she has to take the board and the superintendent as well. Put that in there. Okay. Next is the MHSAA membership. A resolution from the Board of Education is required for our schools to be participating members of the Michigan High School Athletic Association. Facts number 1, Almont Middle School and High School have been members of the Michigan High School Athletic Association for many years. Number 2, the MHSAA is a voluntary nonprofit corporation comprised of public, private, and parochial middle, junior high, and senior high schools whose boards of education have voluntarily applied for and received membership. The association sponsors statewide tournaments and makes eligibility rules with respect to participation in contests. Number 4, by applying for membership, the district stipulates that it will abide by the rules and regulations set forth by the association. Number 5, in order for athletic teams to participate in postseason tournaments, we must be a member of MHSAA. Number 6, the attached resolution will reflect our intent for both the middle school and high school to be members of MHSAA. Any questions? All set. Thank you. Okay, next up we have MASB membership. Bylaw 0175, Association membership, states the Board of Education may consider membership in the Michigan Association of School Boards. Number 1, the MASB provides a wealth of opportunities for workshops and conferences for members in addition to such resources as the MASB Journal, Headlines, Tenure Digest. Also, MASB provides several informational annual reports. Example, the annual teacher contract settlement report, the superintendent's salary and fringe benefit report, and the administrator's salary report. It's important, number 2, it's important to note that membership in the MASB allows the district to take advantage of the set-seg insurance pools, which have been very beneficial to us. Number 3, the fee for the 2025-2026 school year is $4,374.66. Last year's rate was $4,378.93. The fee includes a contribution to the legal trust fund. The trust fund provides financial and legal assistance to districts facing lawsuits having major statewide impact on school and district operations. Thank you. The Board of Education approves the student handbooks of each school. The policies and procedures contained in the handbooks serve as a guide for our students. By approving changes to the handbooks, the changes become a part of district policy. Changes to the handbooks were discussed, handbooks and changes were also posted in Google Drive for the board's review. Our Michigan virtual, I'm sorry, curriculum. This is
For curriculum, we have Ms. Brett as a chair, and Mr. Burns and Ms. Rosario are on the.
So for the Michigan virtual dual enrollment update, provide a quick update here for the 2024-2025 school year. Our dual enrollment, 278 classes were taken, there were 2 failures. The protocol for students who fail a class, students are required to pay back the cost of the dual enrollment course that the district paid to home for the class. Students are not allowed to take additional dual enrollment courses if they fail a dual enrollment class. Michigan virtual, 86 online classes, 10 failures. The protocol for Michigan virtual classes, the high school counselor meets with every student who fails and discusses the reason for the failure. Based on the discussion, there's a decision on whether a student will be allowed to take another Michigan virtual course in the future. For the upcoming year, every student was required to get a teacher recommendation for taking a Michigan virtual course. Some students are on a probation status to make sure they stay on task and get a month to stay on task in the class. Any questions? That wasn't a vote, it was just more of an update. If you have any questions?
Question?
No questions? Okay. Moving on to our K-5 reading curriculum, that will be your purple sheet in front of you. No course of study shall be taught in the schools unless it has been adopted by the board, policy 2220. There's an opportunity to receive 35M grant funding to purchase new materials for the legislation that requires all schools to adopt curriculum and assessment supports for dyslexia by 2027, 2028. The new curriculum information has been provided, and Mr. Bruno is recommending the CKLA as the new curriculum to comply with the legislation and qualify for the grant funding.
Mr. Burns? Any questions on that?
Yes, no, I'm good.
Mr. Barron's?
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, this will lead us to our second questions and comments from the audience, and anything can be addressed at this time. You'll have 3 minutes, and you state your first and last name. Would anybody like to be recognized at this time?
My name is Danielle Canary. I teach the 9th grade English and careers at high school. And I know I probably mentioned some of this previous meeting, that's why I'm trying to figure out where it fell, but it's in relation, we've noticed that Mary Campbell's position, she resigned, hasn't been posted, and so looking for some transparency on if that is dependent on the vote on Monday, the budget. If any options for Monday's budget you guys are working on, if any of them include not replacing her position.
So there's not discussion, so our superintendent will get in touch with you. And we also like to be recognized at this time. We still have more time, we have more time, I don't need to cut you off, right?
I don't know what's allowed to be said for now. I guess, is that information available to us anywhere? Or when would we have more information on it be?
And I'm not sure, I guess I'm not sure when you came into tonight's meeting, there, so we are going through all 3 different scenarios, and looking at different things, and as one of our board members pointed out, we're not the how, so those decisions are made by the superintendent, so she'll be in touch with you regarding the question.
I think it's that you guys vote on the scenarios, and so I was wondering if any of them include not replacing.
You're welcome to FOIA all the information, so you can get all of those documents and go through them. That makes you helpful too.
I wouldn't probably have to do I'm not probably have to. As far as transparent though, Mrs. Merrifield is the best case scenario as far as like the budget. That's where a teacher is not being replaced.
Not in place, and the other 2 scenarios are.
In the other 2 scenarios, we are looking to replace that position. Just give you a little feedback. Okay.
That's the Spanish.
Anybody else want to recognize at this time?
Quick question, with Kathy going, be gone for the next 3 days, according to the notices in the paper, we had to notify her on Friday so we could get a copy of budgets for Monday. So that's not gonna happen until Monday, then?
Bob will address that.
So do we direct the questions to you or to the
Do you have
emails?
additional questions?
No, the emails.
Okay.
We had to request, according to the Open Meetings Act and the budget, the public hearing, we were supposed to be able to see the budget prior to the meeting. And she had it posted in the paper that we had to notify her on Friday, the 20th, and she's not gonna be here. So how do we get the copies on?
Well, we'll still be following
Friday?
open meeting act, so if that means somebody else will be designated to distribute that.
So we still send the email to Kathy?
That's what
You
we
can,
have
you can send it to
Okay,
both of us,
all right.
Paul. Yeah, you can send it to both of us, and then we'll go from
Maybe
there.
I'd like to have a copy of both days ahead of time, so they know what you're supposed to, so that we can.
Anybody else like to be recognized at this time? Questions and comments from the Board of Education? I have something. For summer school, do we have updates, like are we full with summer school? We have staff, students, everything?
I am going to, I do have two of my principals here, actually, on that note. I don't know if we have a recent update, I know there was some numbers shared. So this is us, or Mr. Brewer, I invite you to that conversation, just because I know those numbers are going to you directly.
Yeah, I'll give K3 numbers as soon as.
I just, like, are we have enough students?
Oh, I'm sorry, is that what you're asking?
Sorry.
Yes,
just-
we are proceeding
We're
with
good,
the,
we've got,
with the summer school.
we've got K-8 kids registered,
Like,
we've got, we've got classes for different grades of kids, we've got age, what was applicable, we set this year to make sure we were good fiscal stewards. In order to have a para of roughly 11 students, there were obviously some contingencies based on special education needs within there. We've got a special education room with some paraprofessionals in there, but yeah, we are full bore, ready to roll. We're ready to go in July. We've got a great staff set up, and it'll be an awesome program for our kids.
And it is confirmed our transportation and our food service will be at, Bossier Primary.
Yes, yeah.
Just so you know, yeah, I think we all had expectations, so, yeah,
Yes.
we're on target.
Yeah, we're ready to go. It's gonna be awesome.
Perfect. And then at the end of this year, can we do a comparison from last year to this year? Or like if our numbers were up or down?
For participation?
Yeah, after the year.
Can I, one note with that is the criteria for who could participate this year was different from last year. This year it was a much more kids could,
True.
it was at-risk
Definitely
kids, whereas last year was 11T. So my anticipation will be noticeably higher because of the criteria of the fund release.
That makes sense.
Just to be transparent.
Yeah, no, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the Board of Education? Any future agenda items?
Mrs. Smith, can I, I'm sorry, can I, I wanted to, just because everybody's in the room, and if you can, maybe after the meeting, just let me know, July 15th, looking to switch our work session to July 15th. I do have a conflict at the end of the month, I apologize for that. I usually don't manipulate, I'm here for every work session, board meeting, but I am struggling with that date in July, so we'd like to move the work session to July 15th if you are open to do so. If you could please let me know, I'd appreciate it for planning.
Will that work for, finance stuff? I know there's some, they get like closing out the month and stuff like that.
It's the work session, so
Okay.
I'm hoping it will. That's why I'm putting it out on the table now. If we see any hiccups, please let me know.
I'm good with that. Everybody else good with that? Mr. Ray? You can make it work?
I don't know what all this is supposed to be, so.
Can move forward July 15th, planning that.
Sounds like we're gonna make it work.
Yeah, I see some nods, so thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, future agenda items, anybody?
Mrs.
Assistant.
Mr. Burrow.
I move the Board of Education end the Tuesday, June 17th work session at 7:45 p.m.
Support.
Motion and support, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion